Every recipe needs the right spice, especially revenge.
The moment I discovered that silicone device hidden in my wife's glove compartment, still warm and reeking of another man's cologne, I knew my marriage was over. But instead of exploding in rage like most people would, I decided to orchestrate the most calculated revenge my small town had ever witnessed. This is the story of how I exposed my cheating wife and her boss at our town's biggest annual event, destroying their careers and reputations in front of hundreds of witnesses. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I'm 38 years old. For the past 15 years, I've worked as a supply chain coordinator at Coastal Logistics here in Millbrook, Maine. Population 4,200, if you include the outlying farms. It's not a glamorous job, but I'm good at it. I make sure shipments arrive on time, track inventory, manage routing schedules. Basically, I ensure that everything gets where it needs to be, when it needs to be there. The irony that I'd failed to notice what was happening in my own home for months isn't lost on me. Sarah and I had been married for 12 years. We met at a friend's wedding when we were both 26, got married 2 years later, and settled into what I thought was a comfortable life in Millbrook. She worked as a marketing manager at Preston Industries, a regional manufacturing company where she'd been employed for 8 years. Her boss, Nathan Porter, had been promoted to regional director about 6 months ago, right around the time Sarah started working late more frequently. The discovery happened on a humid Tuesday evening in late July. Sarah had asked me to move her Honda Civic out of the garage so she could retrieve her laptop from the trunk. She claimed she needed to finish some urgent presentations for a morning meeting. Looking back, I should have questioned why her laptop was in the trunk instead of her briefcase, or why she hadn't brought work home in over 2 years, but suddenly needed to pull all-nighters on quarterly reports. But I was trusting, naive, the perfect mark for deception. I was rummaging through her glove compartment searching for jumper cables when my hand touched something that definitely wasn't automotive equipment. It was a pink, expensive-looking personal massager, the kind you'd order from an upscale boutique website, not something from the local pharmacy. The device was still noticeably warm, which meant it had been used recently. Very recently. But what really made my stomach drop was the smell. Nathan Porter's signature cologne, that overwhelming mixture of cedarwood and musk that he applied so liberally you could smell him coming from 3 offices away. The same cologne that sometimes lingered on Sarah's clothes when she came home from those late meetings. Standing there in our garage under the harsh fluorescent lights, holding this contaminated evidence of my wife's infidelity, I felt something shift inside me. Not the explosive anger you might expect, not the devastating heartbreak that would come later. Instead, I felt a cold, calculating clarity wash over me. The logistics coordinator and me immediately started analyzing the situation like it was a supply chain problem that needed solving. I walked over to my workbench where I kept my collection of hot sauces and pepper extracts. This wasn't your average Tabasco collection. These were serious capsaicin concentrates I used for the occasional prank at work. My pride and joy was a small brown bottle labeled Carolina Reaper Extreme, rated at 1.5 million Scoville units. The warning label stated it could cause severe irritation and chemical burns if applied directly to skin. Perfect. Using a cotton swab, I carefully applied a thin coating of the extract to Sarah's toy. Not enough to cause permanent damage, I'm not a monster, but definitely sufficient to make her next stress relief session extraordinarily memorable. I placed everything back exactly as I'd found it, closed the glove compartment with the same gentle click, and went inside to wait for the evening's performance. Sarah arrived home about an hour later, looking disheveled despite claiming she'd been stuck in traffic. Her hair was messed up in that specific way that suggested hands had been running through it. She wore a new blouse I'd never seen before. Silk, expensive, the kind of thing she used to buy for special occasions but now apparently wore to work. Her lipstick was completely gone, either from an extremely messy sandwich or from activities I didn't want to imagine in detail. "How was your day, honey?" I asked from my position on the couch, beer in hand, the picture of domestic ignorance. "Oh, the usual meetings and presentations," she replied, already heading toward the stairs. Nathan had some new strategies he wanted to go over with the marketing team. Very intensive session. I really need to shower and relax a bit before I make dinner. "Intensive strategies," I repeated, tasting the words like bitter coffee. I'm sure Nathan really knows how to drive his points home. "Take all the time you need to decompress." She paused on the third step, turning slightly to look at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Suspicion? Annoyance at my tone? After 12 years of marriage, I realized I could no longer read my wife's face. She'd become a stranger wearing Sarah's skin. The scream that erupted from our master bathroom exactly 17 minutes later was loud enough to send our neighbor's dog into a barking frenzy. It was primal, shocked, the sound of someone discovering their private world had been infiltrated. Sarah burst out of the bathroom door with such force that it slammed against the wall, probably leaving a dent in the drywall. She was wrapped in a towel, her face flushed red with rage and what was likely capsaicin-induced inflammation. "What did you do?" she shrieked, her voice hitting octaves I didn't know she could reach. "You went through my things. You violated my privacy." I took another casual sip of my beer, considering my response options. I could play dumb, claim ignorance, gaslight her into thinking she was paranoid. I could immediately confess and throw myself on her mercy, or I could lean into the sarcasm that had been building in my throat for months like acid reflux. I chose option 3. "I was looking for jumper cables," I said calmly. "You know, those things we use to restart dead batteries? Speaking of which, you might want to give yours a thorough cleaning before its next use. Just a helpful suggestion from your caring husband." "You sick blood. You had no right to go through my personal things." "Personal things?" I stood up slowly, finally allowing some of my anger to seep through the calm facade. "Sarah, we've been married for 12 years. I've seen all your personal things. I've bought most of your personal things, but this particular item was new to the collection. Where'd you pick it up? Was it a gift from Nathan? Some kind of employee appreciation award for going above and beyond in your duties?" Her face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Your toy reeks of Nathan's cologne. The same cologne that's been clinging to your clothes for months. Your mileage records don't match your supposed routes to and from work. Yes, I've been tracking them. You've been working late 3 nights a week for the past 3 months, yet your actual workload hasn't increased according to what you tell me about your projects. I'd been documenting everything like the meticulous logistics professional I was. Mileage discrepancies, timeline inconsistencies, pattern changes. Sarah's life had become a series of data points that didn't add up, and I'd been cataloging every single anomaly. She pulled the towel tighter around herself, lifting her chin in that defiant way she'd perfected during our recent arguments. Even if I was having an affair, which I'm not confirming, at least Nathan treats me like I matter. At least he appreciates my intelligence and ambition. When was the last time you made me feel special, Marcus? When was the last time you even noticed I existed beyond asking what's for dinner? "You're right," I said, surprising her. "I probably haven't been the most attentive husband, but at least I've been faithful. At least I haven't been sneaking around, lying to your face, and contaminating our marriage bed with another person's bodily fluids." That triggered an explosion. Sarah launched into a tirade about how I was a pathetic excuse for a man, how I'd never amounted to anything beyond my mediocre job, how Nathan was twice the man I'd ever be. More successful, more passionate, more everything. She listed every one of my failures, real and imagined, with the precision of someone who'd been mentally cataloging grievances for years. I let her vent. Sometimes you need to let people reveal their true nature. Let them show you exactly who they've become when they think they have the upper hand. When she finally ran out of steam, standing there panting in her towel like she'd just run a marathon of marital destruction, I walked over to the window and looked out at our quiet street. Old Mr. Peterson was pretending to water his already drowned garden while obviously trying to eavesdrop on our domestic drama. Mrs. Chen was walking her trio of cats on leashes. Yes, she actually walks cats on leashes, and pausing suspiciously long in front of our house. The neighborhood was witnessing the collapse of the Thompson marriage, and I found I didn't care anymore. "You know what, Sarah? You're absolutely right," I said, turning back to face her. "Nathan probably is twice the man I am. He's certainly twice as slimy, twice as fake, and twice as likely to throw you under the bus when this whole situation explodes. Because it will explode. Affairs always do, especially in a town this small." I walked past her toward the garage, pausing at the doorway. "But here's what you don't understand. I'm not the same man you married 12 years ago. That man would have begged you to stop, would have promised to change, would have done anything to save this marriage even after discovering your betrayal. That man is dead. The man standing here now, he's just getting started." The look of uncertainty that flickered across her face told me she was finally beginning to understand that her mild-mannered, predictable husband might not be as docile as she'd assumed. Over the next few days, I discovered something that shouldn't have surprised me, but did. Practically half the town already knew about Sarah's affair. In a place like Millbrook, secrets are currency, and everyone trades in them except the people most directly affected. My education began at Murphy's Tavern, our local watering hole and unofficial information exchange center. Jake Murphy, the owner and bartender for the past 25 years, was like an Irish priest who traded confessions for beer money. He knew everything about everyone, but usually kept his mouth shut unless he liked you or disliked the person you were asking about. "Marcus," he called out as I walked in for my usual after-work beer on Thursday. "How's the married life treating you these days?" The way he emphasized married told me he knew something and was fishing to see if I knew it too. "Oh, you know how it is, Jake. Some days you're winning, some days you're learning. Today, I'm definitely learning." He poured my beer with theatrical slowness, building up to something. Learning's good, especially with all the changes happening around town. New partnerships forming, people working overtime on special projects. Changes? I played along. Well, take Nathan Porter, for instance. That boy's been spending a lot of time at the Riverside Inn lately. Lunch hours, mostly. Funny thing is, his wife Patricia told my wife at the grocery store that he's been traveling to Portland for client meetings. Now, I'm no geography expert, but last I checked, the Riverside Inn is about 15 minutes from here, not 2 hours north in Portland. Before I could respond, Diana Martinez slid onto the bar stool next to me. Diana worked in accounting at Coastal Logistics and had been my closest friend at work for 7 years. She also possessed the most accurate gossip network in 3 counties and the inability to keep any of it to herself. "Are we discussing Nathan Porter's extracurricular activities?" she asked, signaling Jake for her usual whiskey sour. "Because, honey, that ship hasn't just sailed. It's circumnavigated the globe twice and is heading for its 3rd lap." "That obvious?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Marcus, sweetheart, Helen Keller could see what's going on between those two. Last Tuesday, I saw Sarah's car at the Riverside Inn at 1:30 in the afternoon. Her lunch break is from 12 to 1. The inn is 15 minutes from her office each way. Either she's developed the ability to manipulate time and space, or she's manipulating something else entirely." Jake chuckled while polishing a glass. "Tell him about the expense reports." Diana's eyes lit up with the glee of someone about to share particularly juicy information. "Oh, this is beautiful. So yesterday I'm processing expense reports, and Nathan submits receipts for client dinners at Chez Francois. That's the fancy French place downtown. $160 for 2 people, which is steep, even for that place, unless you're ordering the lobster and champagne." She took a sip of her whiskey, savoring both the drink and the drama. "But here's where it gets interesting. The receipt is dated for last Wednesday night, the exact same Wednesday when Sarah told you she was working late on the Henderson account, and the exact same night Nathan told Patricia he was at a conference in Portland. So either they've mastered by location, or someone's lying to multiple people." I felt something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. Not surprise, I'd already confirmed the affair. But hearing the details, understanding the casual cruelty with which they'd been deceiving everyone, made it real in a way that finding evidence hadn't. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "Best guess? About 3 months, Diana said. Started right after that regional conference in Boston. You know, the one where Sarah came back all excited about new opportunities for growth and exploring untapped potential. Yeah, she definitely explored something, but I don't think it was market demographics." "The whole town knows," Jake added quietly. "Everyone except you and Patricia. Though I heard Patricia's starting to ask questions. She was at the post office yesterday interrogating Linda about Nathan's supposed travel schedule." "Fantastic," I muttered. "So when this bomb goes off, I get to be the oblivious husband and she gets to be the betrayed wife. Maybe we should start a support group." "Or," Jake said, refilling my glass without being asked, "you could take control of the narrative before they write you out of the story entirely." I looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I mean that right now, you're playing defense. You're reacting to their moves instead of making your own. In my experience, the person who controls the game controls the outcome. You need to go on offense." Diana nodded enthusiastically, her accounting mind already working through the possibilities. "Jake's right. You need to document everything. Build an airtight case. Then choose your moment for maximum impact." "You're talking about revenge," I said. "I'm talking about justice," Jake corrected. There's a difference. Revenge is emotional, messy, usually stupid. Justice is calculated, public, and usually permanent. I thought about that as I nursed my second beer. Justice. I like the sound of that. Hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to ensure justice was served, how would they go about it? Diana's smile was carnivory. Hypothetically? Well, first you'd need evidence. Paper trails, digital records, witness statements. Build a case like you're going to court even if you're not. Then you'd need to consider timing and venue. Maximum impact means choosing when and where the information comes to light. The Founders Festival is in 2 weeks, Jake mentioned casually, as if the thought had just occurred to him. Biggest event of the year. Everyone will be there. Mayor, city council, business owners, probably some regional reporters covering the event. The plan formed in my mind like a logistics chart, all the pieces falling into perfect sequence. The Founders Festival. Of course, it was perfect. I spent the next 2 weeks in full reconnaissance mode, applying every skill I'd learned in 15 years of supply chain management to documenting my wife's affair. First, I established their patterns with scientific precision. Tuesdays and Thursdays were their regular meeting days. Sarah would text me around noon claiming she needed to work late, always with a specific project name that sounded important but vague. Nathan would file expense reports for client meetings on those same days. According to Diana's inside information, his Mercedes would be in the Riverside Inn parking lot from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. like clockwork. The digital evidence was almost too easy to obtain. Sarah had always been careless with passwords, using Sunshine 2012 for everything, the year we got married, which felt like a cruel irony now. Her laptop was password protected with the same phrase, but she'd also written it on a Post-it note stuck under her monitor. Apparently, operational security wasn't covered in those marketing meetings with Nathan. Her email was a gold mine of incriminating evidence. 3 months of increasingly intimate exchanges that started professionally and quickly devolved into something that would make a romance novelist blush. The early messages maintained some pretense of propriety. Thanks for the insightful presentation today, and looking forward to collaborating more closely on future projects. But by month 2, they'd progressed to can't wait for our next private strategy session, and you make every workday an adventure. The email that really made my blood boil was from last week. Sarah had written, "Marcus is working late at the warehouse tonight. Want to come over and see our new bedroom furniture? I think you'd appreciate the craftsmanship, especially the headboard." She'd brought him into our house, into our bedroom, into the bed I'd bought for our 10th anniversary. That crossed a line I didn't even know existed until it was violated. But the most revealing exchange was from just 3 days ago. Nathan had written, "We need to be more careful. Your husband isn't as stupid as he looks, and I can't afford any complications right now. Patricia's been asking questions, and I've got that promotion review with corporate next month. Maybe we should cool things down for a while." Sarah's response was desperate and pathetic. "Please don't do this. I can handle Marcus. He doesn't suspect anything, and even if he did, what's he going to do? He's too much of a coward to make waves. We can be more discreet, but please don't end this. You mean everything to me. You're the only thing that makes me feel alive anymore?" Nathan's reply was a masterclass in manipulation. "I'm not ending anything, baby. Just being strategic. We have something special, but we need to protect it. Trust me on this. Once I get that promotion, everything will be different. We just need to be patient." I printed out every email, organized them chronologically, and stored them in a folder I labeled Project Justice. My own little joke that would have made Jake proud. Then there was the physical surveillance. I didn't follow them around like some private investigator in a noir film. Instead, I used the technology at my disposal. Sarah's iPhone was still connected to our shared Apple account, which meant I could track her location in real time. Every Tuesday and Thursday, her phone showed her leaving the office at 1:15 p.m., arriving at the Riverside Inn by 1:30, and staying there until exactly 4:30. Then she'd return to the office, stay another hour to establish her alibi, and come home with elaborate stories about difficult clients and demanding deadlines. The witnesses started coming forward without me even asking. Mr. Peterson, my 72-year-old neighbor who spent his retirement monitoring our street like a suburban surveillance system, provided crucial intelligence one Saturday morning. "Saw a silver Mercedes in your driveway last Wednesday afternoon," he mentioned, while pretending to trim his already perfect hedge. "Fancy car, Massachusetts plates. Driver was a well-dressed fellow, maybe mid-40s. Stayed about an hour while you were at work." "Did you see who let him in?" I asked, though I already knew. "Well, I don't want to be a gossip," he said. clearly desperate to gossip. But I happened to be watering my tomatoes when Sarah answered the door. She was wearing one of those silk robes, the kind women wear in movies when they're trying to be seductive. Seemed a bit underdressed for a business meeting, if you ask me. They'd been in my house, in my bed, while I was at work, earning the money that paid for that bed. The rage that hit me was so intense, I had to grip the fence to keep from putting my fist through something. As the Founders Festival approached, I refined my plan down to the minute. I'd spoken to the mayor's assistant about making a community announcement claiming I wanted to recognize local volunteers. She'd added me to the speaker list without asking for details, the benefit of being a boring, reliable citizen for 15 years. The festival was everything I'd hoped for. Perfect weather, massive turnout, and a crowd that included everyone who mattered in Millbrook and several surrounding towns. Nathan was there in his element, working the crowd in his expensive polo shirt and khakis, his Mercedes parked prominently in the VIP section. Sarah wore a new sundress, red, tight, and definitely not from any store in Millbrook. She positioned herself strategically where Nathan could see her while pretending to help with the dessert table. Patricia Porter stood with the garden club ladies, no longer pretending not to notice her husband's wandering attention. She watched him with the intensity of a hawk studying a mouse. At exactly 2 p.m., right before the pie-eating contest that always drew the biggest crowd, Mayor Harrison called for community announcements. This was it. 15 years of being reliable, predictable Marcus had led to this moment. I walked to the stage, my legs steadier than I'd expected. The crowd parted, and I could see Sarah's face shifting from confusion to alarm as she recognized me approaching the microphone. "Thank you, Mayor Harrison," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the square. "I'm Marcus Thompson, and I have something important to share with our community." I looked out at the sea of faces, curious, impatient, some already pulling out phones to record whatever was about to happen. The modern world's reflex to document everything was about to work in my favor. For 12 years, I've been married to Sarah Thompson. She's ambitious, hardworking, and always looking for ways to advance her career. Recently, she's been working very closely with her supervisor, Nathan Porter, on some special projects. Sarah's face had gone pale. Nathan was trying to catch her eye, probably calculating if they could both disappear without it looking suspicious. "Their collaboration has been so intensive," I continued, my voice remaining calm and factual, "that they've been meeting at the Riverside Inn every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon for the past 3 months. Now, that's what I call dedication to professional development." The crowd murmured. People understood this wasn't going to be a typical community announcement. But what really impressed me was discovering just how much they value each other's contributions. For example, here's a voice message my wife accidentally sent to my phone instead of Nathan's. I held up my phone and pressed play. Sarah's voice, crystal clear through the speaker system, filled the square. "Hey, baby. Marcus totally bought my story about working late again. God, he's so clueless. Sometimes I feel bad for how trusting and naive he is. Anyway, I can't wait to see you this afternoon. I bought that lingerie you liked from the website you sent me." The silence was absolute. You could have heard a lobster claw drop. "And here's Nathan's response to a similar message," I continued, playing the next recording. "Your husband really is pathetic, isn't he? I can't believe he hasn't figured out what's happening right under his nose. You deserve so much better than that small-town loser. Don't worry about Marcus. He's too much of a coward to do anything, even if he found out." That's when Patricia Porter's voice cut through the crowd like a chainsaw. "Nathan Michael Porter, you lying, cheating blood!" The crowd erupted. Patricia charged through the crowd toward her husband, who was desperately looking for an escape route. Sarah was crying, trying to disappear, but everyone was pointing, recording, whispering. The entire town's social media feeds were about to be dominated by this moment. "Now, this might seem like a private matter," I said, having to raise my voice over the chaos. "But when I discovered Nathan has been using company funds to facilitate this affair, expense accounts for their meetings, false reports to cover their absences, even discussing ways to get me terminated from my job to remove complications, that affects our entire community's trust in Preston Industries." I handed the microphone back to the stunned mayor and walked off the stage. Mission accomplished. 15 years of logistics experience had just paid off in the most spectacular way possible. The aftermath exceeded my wildest expectations. Within an hour, videos of my announcement were trending on local social media. By that evening, they'd been shared thousands of times. The local news picked up the story. Spurned husband exposes affair at town festival. Sarah didn't come home that night. She left a note calling me cruel and vindictive, apparently missing the irony after her 3-month deception. Patricia threw all of Nathan's belongings onto their front lawn with a sign reading, "Free stuff from cheating ex-husband." By Sunday afternoon, neighborhood kids were using his golf clubs as swords and his expensive watches as frisbees. More importantly, Patricia called Nathan's corporate headquarters Monday morning with all the evidence I'd shared with her, plus additional information she'd discovered. Nathan was terminated by Tuesday afternoon. Not suspended, not demoted, but completely fired with cause. No severance, no references, no golden parachute. Corporate launched an investigation into 2 years of expense reports and was considering criminal fraud charges. Sarah lasted until Thursday. Officially, she was let go as part of a restructuring, but everyone knew the real reason. Preston Industries couldn't risk the liability of keeping her employed after such a public scandal involving misuse of company resources. When the divorce papers arrived the following week, Sarah had the audacity to demand half of everything plus alimony, claiming emotional distress from public humiliation. My lawyer sent back the full documentation of her affair. Her demands shrank to taking her personal belongings and her car. She knew she had no legal or moral ground to stand on. The town's reaction surprised me most. Instead of criticism for my public revelation, I was treated like a folk hero. Jake at Murphy's Tavern bought my drinks for a month, calling me the man who finally stood up for every betrayed spouse. Mrs. Chen baked me casseroles weekly, telling me I was an inspiration. Even Mr. Peterson, who'd provided crucial intelligence, acted like we'd completed a successful military operation together. "That was tactical brilliance, Marcus," he told me one evening. "You identified the objective, gathered intelligence, chose the optimal point of engagement, and executed with precision. In my Army days, we called that a textbook operation." 3 weeks after the festival, Diana told me both Nathan and Sarah were desperately calling their former employers, begging for their jobs back. Nathan claimed I'd fabricated evidence and he was the sufferer of a vindictive employee. Sarah insisted she'd been manipulated by a superior who misused his position of authority. Funny how quickly narratives change when consequences arrive. Patricia filed for divorce and discovered Nathan had been hiding debts and assets for years. She was suing for everything, plus emotional damages. The Riverside Inn's manager, suddenly worried about his establishment's reputation, claimed he'd been about to report the suspicious activity, but I'd acted first. The beautiful truth was that I'd done everything completely legally. No violence, no illegal surveillance, no behavior I'd be ashamed of later. Just truth delivered at the perfect moment for maximum impact. They wanted to humiliate me privately while pretending to be respectable members of the community. I simply returned the favor publicly, letting everyone see who they really were beneath their professional facades. Walking past the town square last week, I stood where that stage had been set up. The space was quiet now, back to its normal state of small-town tranquility. But I could still remember the weight of that microphone in my hand, the faces in the crowd, the moment when I transformed from the sufferer of the story to its author. Sarah and Nathan thought they were sophisticated players in a game I was too simple to understand. They forgot that small towns have long memories and that reputation matters more than money or status. They also forgot that the pathetic, clueless logistics guy they'd mocked was actually exceptional at his job. And logistics is all about timing, planning, and execution. In the end, they got exactly what they deserved. Complete exposure of their true characters in front of the people whose opinions mattered most. The hot sauce on the toy had been satisfying in the moment, but the real revenge was showing everyone who they really were when they thought no one was watching. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about anger or violence. Sometimes it's just about pulling back the curtain and letting the light shine on what's been hiding in the shadows. In logistics, we call that transparency in the supply chain. In life, I call it justice. And in Millbrook, Maine, justice was served at exactly 2:07 p.m. on a perfect Saturday afternoon, with the whole town as witness.